All right, everyone, welcome to the Real Estate Game Changer Show. I'm your host, Mike McKay, based in Jacksonville, Florida. And each and every week, we do this show with people who are changing the game of real estate all over the country. And this is a live show. So if you have any questions, please put them in the comments for our guest to answer. If anyone is in the Jacksonville area and they're in sales and thinking about getting into real estate, we are looking for some salespeople to join our acquisitions team. If that sounds like you, send me a DM on Instagram and let's talk. This week on the show, we have Sharad Mehta. Sharad, welcome to the show.
Hey, Mike, thank you for having me on the show, man. Super excited to be talking some real estate with you.
Cool. Um, so, for the people who don't know you, could you talk a little bit about how you got into the real estate business and how that's led you to where you are today?
Yeah, so I used to live in Chicago. I live in San Diego now. I was working as an accountant for one of the largest accounting firms and just was looking for some freedom of time and money. Started looking at like what I could do with my time, just to get more independence. Looked at investing in stocks and bonds, just wasn't very good at it. Wanted to be a full-time poker player, absolutely horrible at it. And then just came across real estate, reading personal finance blog. Someone had mentioned a book about flipping in one of the comments. So I read that book, and then in Amazon, there's a suggestion of you may also like. So there was a book about millionaire real estate investor, and there was something about the title. I'm like, oh, this sounds like not a bad thing to be, millionaire real estate investor. And real estate is a very relatable topic, asset. So I read the book and like, oh, just instantly kind of related to the investment strategy. So bought my first property in August 2010, a 2 unit, and then bought another 3 unit a month after, and then just kind of scaled my business from there.
And at what point did you decide to jump into real estate full time and leave accounting?
Just like end of by the end of the year, and then I ended up leaving my job in March 2011. So from the time I bought my first property to the time I left my job, it's like 6 months. I wasn't making enough money from real estate to cover my expenses, but my wife and I, we had been very conservative with our finances. We were living in the lower of the two incomes, saving the higher income. So when I decided to leave my job, it wasn't going to impact our lifestyle.
Uh,
The idea was just this is back in 2010, 11. The market was absolutely crazy. You could just pick any house you wanted to buy from MLS. Like the first property I bought was for 25,000, listed on the market for 65. I bought it for 25, put 10 into it, and I rented it for 1,300. It just, the numbers were insane. So I decided, the worst that's going to happen if I leave my job and pursue this full time is that I'm absolutely the dumbest person in the world, and I end up losing about 100, which absolutely sucks. But given we didn't have any kids, the stage of my life where I was at, like, okay, I can just go back to my accounting job and make that money again. But the upside was, if everything works out as kind of I'm hoping it will, the upside is infinite versus the downside is about losing 100 to 150,000.
hmm. So you went full time, and then did you keep buying just rentals, or did you start
Yeah.
doing some things to generate active income?
So for the first couple of years or year and a half, I was just buying rental properties. I connected with a private lender who was giving me the 7 year amortized loans with a 2 year balloon. So I was just kind of forcing myself to pay these off. So all the money that I was making from rental income, I would pay off. Then I would get another loan. So there's like really, really quick payoff loans. Then
Wow.
2012, 13, I started selling some properties to Australian investors. So Australian dollar was strong back in 2012 through 14, 15 compared to US dollar. So you had a lot of overseas money coming in. And then 2014, I also kind of started actively flipping properties, which kind of the flips that you see on HGTV. But the goal always was to generate more passive income.
Yeah. And how big is your rental portfolio today?
about 60 units, and
Okay.
there 55 of them are paid for free and clear.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And are they? I know you were in Chicago and then you moved. Are they mostly in
I sorry,
Chicago?
the properties were in Indiana, right outside of Chicago.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah,
And
nothing
are
in
they?
Chicago.
Is the majority of your property still there, or do you now
No,
own
all
like
of them are still there.
they're all still
Yeah,
there?
everything that I own is in that one area. It's a very small area. Like total population of that entire county is about maybe 400,000, 500 max. So it's a
Hmm.
very small county, and I own everything. Still own everything that I'd bought for rental purposes for myself. I own a property management company also. I actively flip in the area also,
Hmm.
but that's the only market that I operate in. Nothing outside of that.
Gotcha. What made you choose that market in Indiana?
It's just more landlord friendly. That was the only reason. And I just happened to live in downtown Chicago, 30, 45 minutes from Indiana.
Hmm.
So it's way more landlord friendly than Chicago was ever going to be.
Yeah. Gotcha. And then now you said you live in. We were talking offline. You said you live in San Diego.
North of San Diego in Carlsbad.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha. And then but you still do all your real estate business over in Indiana.
correct. Yeah, other than my personal residence, I don't own anything outside of Indiana.
Yeah. How have you set up your business to be able to run all that remotely?
Using a lot of systems and processes. So for my house flipping business, we flip about 25, 30 houses. We don't have anyone local in Indiana. So the team is me, my project manager who lives an hour north of me in California, and then I
Hmm.
have one person in Philippines, and then the contractors, which are 1099 over in Indiana. So it's a very
Interesting.
remote virtual business, and I have not been to Indiana. I don't even know last time I was in Indiana. Yeah, it's been at least
Yeah.
2, 3 years since I was last in Indiana. So I've been to Indiana twice in last 5 years. I'm
And
going there
even
in a
your
couple of weeks. Yeah.
and even your project manager, he's not in Indiana.
Yeah, she's not in
Or she.
Indiana. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Interesting.
she lives an hour north of me.
Interesting. I'm curious how
Yeah.
like what kind of processes and systems has she set up in order to be able to project manage those flips remotely?
I mean, for one, we're working with the same contractor. So it's a very simple thing. If we're gonna, so the flips that we do, it's either your typical retail flip that you think about a flip, selling to a homeowner, or it's a flip that we're selling as a turnkey property to an investor.
Hmm.
So when we buy a property, the contractor only needs to know, are we flipping this house to a homeowner, or it's going to be a turnkey property? If it's a turnkey property, it's same paint, same flooring, everything is same from start to finish. If it's a flip property, we'll use majority of the finishes that we used in the last flip and carry over, so we don't have to decide. And then we'll change certain things. We might change the countertops. We might change the paint color a little bit, just to make it different enough from the previous flip, but
Mm.
80% of the materials will be the same. And like, she's the one who's managing all the contractors. I've never talked to any of the contractors that we have. I don't even know their names. I've never seen them, never talked to them. So she's the one who manages all of that. So I created a software recently that I'm founder of. So we manage everything through that software. So I come from an accounting background. Everything for me comes down to making decisions based on the numbers, based on the data that we have
Mm.
in our business. And she's the one who's talking to contractors, managing everything on the back end. She goes out there once every 4 to 6 months,
Mm.
just to meet the contractors. And but we don't have anyone like in the area who's kind of checking on the properties. It's do everything virtually, everything remote. If the contractors are working on something, they'll send us pictures and videos of the house to get the next payment that they want.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And that project manager, and I'm curious because we're kind of looking to hire that role at some point in the next few months. Like, what were you looking for when you hired her?
So she's been with me since I moved to Carlsbad area. So she's been with me for about 7, 8 years now. I moved there 2015. So yeah, and I
Mm,
think I hired her 2016. So she's been with me for 8 years. She was going to be my personal assistant when I hired her.
hmm
So back when I hired her, she lived 10, 15 minutes from where I live. So her name is Claudia. I said, okay, Claudia, I had a home office and I said, okay, I needed to come in, work from the office. I thought that would be more effective, more efficient. So first week she came in every day. Then I'm like, I don't need you to be here every day. Whatever you're doing here, you can just do it from home. So just come 3 days a week. And the week after, I'm like, just come 2 days a week. Then week after, I'm like, just come one day. I'm like, you know what? Just work from wherever you want. You're doing what you need to do. So she didn't have any project management background, but she was very organized. She's super organized person, very honest, super organized. So that's kind of she's grown into the role of project manager now
hmm
and manages everything. I think the most important skill in a project manager, especially if you're doing, 5 to 7 projects at a time, is just to be organized, make sure all the documentation is there. For me, at the end of the day, like the most important thing is to be able to make the decision based on the number. Like today, we purchased a property in the morning. I don't even know the address of it. I know what city it's in, but I know how much we're buying it for and how much profit we're expecting to make on that. So that's
mm
kind of all I need to know about that. If if we go into a new city where we get a PPC lead where we generally don't market, that's where I would get a little involved. Hey, let's just make sure, does this make sense or not? But if it's in like 4 or 5 cities that we buy in, we know the area so well, it's just a matter of making decisions based on the numbers. So all we need to know is just, do the numbers make sense? So if
mm
and then she gets compensated on how much money we make on the deal and how quickly we sell the deal. So she
mm
gets a base, plus she gets 10% off the final profit after we also factor in the holding cost.
hmm
So the longer the project takes, the more the holding cost is, the less money she makes. But we also have to make minimum $15,000 for her to be eligible for bonus. If it's less than 15, she doesn't make anything. It needs to be more than 15. And then if it goes over like 40, 50, then she gets a little bit additional bonus.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. And you said you had built some software around flipping. You want to
Right.
talk about that?
I mean, it's not necessarily for flipping, but yeah, I mean, it's a all-in-one CRM for real estate investors to help them manage, everything from the data that you have, the marketing list that you have, to your seller leads, buyer leads, your projects that you have. So I created something when I moved from Chicago to Carlsbad area where I live now. I was very hands-on in my business when I was living in Chicago. If a
Mm,
contractor called me and said, for example, if a plumber called me and said, hey, Sharad, there's a leak at this house, I would drive from my place in downtown Chicago to Indiana 30, 40 minutes and say, okay, yes, there's a leak, let's fix it. But when I moved to Carlsbad, I could not do that. There wasn't an option. So I said, all right, just why don't you call me on FaceTime or WhatsApp and show me what's going on? So it just made me realize I didn't have to move to California to be able to do that. I could have just done the same thing from Chicago, where if he called me, it's just, I didn't have to drive down just because it was not that far. I was just stupid enough to drive down. But after I moved there, that wasn't an option. So I started looking at different software that I could use in my business to be more efficient, more effective. I didn't find anything that would be a good fit. So coming from an accounting background, being able to make decisions based on the numbers in the business was super
mm,
important. It had to be super simple to use, and it had to be one software that everyone on my team could use, not putting
mm.
together all these different software like Podio and then using a dialer and all these different stuff that you have to use. I didn't find anything, so I thought, all right, I'm going to hire a couple of developers just to create something for myself. So I did that in 2017, I think, and it just kind of started growing from there, and it ended up being what it is now.
Yeah, gotcha. What was the first thing that you decided to build out on that software when you initially built it?
It was project management software. Is
Okay.
built for very specific for my business.
Yeah.
So it like the whole idea was I'm going to build something that I need in my business.
Mm,
If it doesn't add value to someone else, but it just makes me more efficient, it's going to pay for itself in a year or two just from the efficiencies that I'm going to have. So once I started getting into it, then kind of the business starts getting more complex, not the real estate as the software side, but the real estate side. Like, okay, it would be cool if I can manage this also, manage that also. Then you
mm.
just kind of kept growing and growing from there. And then as part of a couple of masterminds, I would go and show people what I was doing, and they would get curious about, hey, what software are you using? So there's it started growing from there.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And you said you're still like, running the flipping business. You said you're doing about 25 or so every year.
Yeah, 25, 30 flips a year.
Yeah. And how are you sourcing all your deals?
We do direct mail, PPC. We do some paper leads like need to sell my house fast. And there's another one, Zolo lead. And because we flip, we have been able to buy some stuff from MLS also.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then who handles that though when those leads come in?
Jay, my acquisition manager in Philippines.
Okay. So it's all over
Yeah.
so that's all virtual too. There's no one on the
Yeah,
ground.
yeah. I've never talked to us. I mean I shouldn't say I've never talked to us. I don't know the last time I talked to a seller. It's been at least, I don't know, 9, 10 years.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gotcha.
I would just kill the deal if I started talking to the seller. Yeah. 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 Jay is good at that stuff. I'm not. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So he handles all of that. Yeah. It
Yeah.
just like so we'll just like if something he'll just tag me in a comment and say, hey Sharad, what do you think of this? And then, I mean, it's like he just tagged me, but it's more for Claudia. Claudia, can we get the ARV on this property? And can you send the contractors out to get the estimate on it? So those are the two numbers that we need: the
Mhm.
ARV and the estimate from our contractors. So once, and then if it's in an area where that makes sense, then we just move forward. I'll get involved if it's like an iffy area. We're like, oh, should we buy or should we not buy? That's
Mm.
where I'll get involved and make a decision. But the one we bought today, it's in an amazing city. So all we needed to make sure was number made sense. We didn't have to look at, we didn't have to make a decision, oh, should we buy in this city or not?
Yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah.
And then you said you built out a lot of other like kind of systems, processes. You want to talk about some of those?
Um, I mean, it's everything from, starting, let's say if you need a certain output, everything starts from what is it the activity that I control in my business to get that output. If
Hmm.
you put it in different contexts, let's say if my goal is to lose weight, right? Let's say I weigh 300 pounds and I want to get to 200 pounds, right? That's my goal, is to get to 200 pounds.
Hmm.
Now I need to look at what do I control in order to get to that goal. I control how often I go to the gym
Hmm.
and what do I eat. So let's say I start at 300 pounds. A month or two later, I weigh myself. I'm at 310 pounds. I'm like, oh, shoot, I'm going in the wrong direction. Then I go back to the input. Am I going to the gym? Yes. I'm going to the gym, but what am I doing there? Am I just going to the gym just to check it off my list? But I'm going there with, a bucket of KFC and sitting in front of the TV and eating. That's not really going to the gym. So what needs to happen is I need to control the input that I have. So it's the same thing in the business, right? If we need to flip a house and our goal is to make minimum when we're flipping about 35 to 40,000 minimum on every single deal that we do. So then the goal starts with, all right, that's the number that we need to get to, right? So we know, all right, we need to make minimum 35, 40,000 on every single deal. Now, the other two variables that we need to look at is, okay, how much can we sell this house for?
Hmm.
And what's the maximum budget to fix this property for us, right?
Hmm.
So if the house is, let's say, we use a simple 70% formula, we don't do anything fancy. So
Hmm.
if it's we need to make minimum 35,000, so we start with 200,000, take 70%, it gets to 140, and let's say if it's going to cost us 40,000 to rehab the property. It's simple. Just offer no more than 100,000. Start with 80, go up to 100. If they take 100, great. If not, then we move on. I mean, if it gets to like 105, that's where I'll get involved. Okay, do we want to spend extra 5,000? Like, do we have enough deals in the pipeline where, it's worth taking this risk of overpaying by $5,000? So that's where I'll get involved
Mm,
on those sort of decisions. But when it's, if our max was 100,000 and the seller is willing to take 90, then there's nothing for me to decide on that. Right?
mm,
It just goes from, all right, Jay at that point will send me a contract to sign. He'll tag me and say, hey, Sharad, I send you a contract. Can you sign it? I'll sign it. Goes to the seller to sign. Once seller sign, it goes to escrow, and at that point it's just about matter of closing, and then Claudia will take over on that project. So it's super simple but extremely effective for us.
mm,
um, we can scale it to about 40-50 deals a year with the same team. Maybe we may need to hire another person, but it works the way it works for me. It's amazing, but I don't need to get involved. I have other things going on. I own, recently, of course, I own a property management company, and I have rentals. So I have to be very mindful of my time, how much time I'm putting into these different businesses that I have. And the same thing on the property management company. Maybe I talk to my property manager once every week or once every other week, but it's, they know what the expectations are. Like, they know what
mm,
I'm going to look at. I'm going to look at how much rent did we collect, right? How much money came in? What's our vacancy percentage? What's our rent collection percentage, and those sort of
mm,
things. If, as long as those numbers are making sense, there's nothing for me to get involved. If there's something where I feel like, okay, we can add a little bit of more efficiency here, then I'll get
mm,
involved, right? If you want to ramp up our business, for example, we're hiring a cold caller starting next week just to ramp up our business a little bit, just to get a couple of extra deals. I figured if we hire one person in Philippines, we pay them, let's say, $5 an hour, that's 10,000 for the year. Even if that person helps us find one deal in 1 year, right, which is very reasonable, they're going to pay their salary for next 3 to 4 years,
mm,
right? So that's kind of how we're looking at it. And because we have Jay now to manage that process, I can have him manage that person, but I manage the entire process from the numbers. Okay, the cold caller needs to make about 400 calls a day. So in a month, they're making 8,000 calls. If they, let's say they work 20 days in a month, they're making 400 calls a day. So they're going to make 8,000 calls in a month. And then if we have a list of, let's say, 45, 50,000 people, they go through their entire list in 6 months, and they start with the same list at the end of 6 months, and just keep doing that. So hopefully we should
mm,
be able to get one deal, which is very reasonable to expect. But for me, it would be, okay, how many calls did we make? Of the calls did we make, how many people did we connect with? How many of the people did we connect with? How many leads did we have? So then I
mm,
would just look at, okay, we spoke with, did we make 400 calls? Yes. How many people did we connect with? Did we connect with like 30, 40 people? Yes. How many leads did we get out of it? If, I can see if we only called 100 people, so then what is the person doing, only calling 100 people? Why are they not calling 400 people? If they call 400 people but we only make connection with one person, what happened? Do we have wrong numbers? Do we have,
mm,
bad numbers? Then we look at that. So there's always things that you can look at and see where you need to make a little bit of tweak in your business in order to fix the process that you have. Once you
mm,
have a process that you built around, then it's just a matter of just keep doing more and more of it, just
mm.
trusting the process and let the process kind of take care of the business at that point.
Yeah, for sure. And then the property management side, do you manage for other people, or you just built that out only for your own rentals?
No, so we manage for other people. It wasn't my intention, but it's just such a property management is one of those businesses where you are slave to two masters. You have the owner and then you have the tenant, and both of them are always pissed off at you for one reason or the other. Like, nobody seems to be happy. And then, so I was using a property management company for my properties, and they were just stealing money left and right. you know they
Mm,
hired their like siblings to work on the property. You did get invoices on stuff. It was just total crap. I mean, if they were stealing a little bit of money, I would have been like, okay, fine. But if just like blatantly stealing, then you're like, okay, now I need to get involved. So I hired someone to manage my properties, and they were doing a really good job. So my primary business at that point was turnkey properties. Like, we'll
Mm,
buy these properties, fix them up, rent them out, and sell to other investors. So once I pulled my properties out, some of the other investors that we were selling properties, they pulled their properties out. And then now I think we manage a portfolio about 250 units.
mm,
But it's not something that we actively market for. If someone just comes to us and
mm,
says, "Hey, will you manage our properties?" We do that, but we
mm.
don't do any paid ads or anything. We don't like, our goal is not to scale that business. The goal is just to kind of keep it where it's at, where we're super efficient, great team, and as much as the property managers can, they kind of enjoy, doing the work that they're doing.
As much as they
Yeah.
can.
I mean, it sucks to be a property manager. I mean, have you like tried talking to tenants? They're always pissed off about something. Yeah.
That's why I have a property manager.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, it's a tough business to be in. So
Mm,
I mean, I've had my property manager call me and just cry on the phone a couple of times,
yeah.
and and I'm like, I understand. I would walk out of the door if I were you. You are way more, brave and patient than I am. It's a tough business, but so I like, my main role with Gabby, who's the main property manager, is just to like check in and just see how she's doing. Is she doing okay? So we just hired another person part time, 20 25 hours a week, just to help her with taking
Mm,
some of the stuff that she doesn't enjoy doing, right?
mm.
Like talking to some of the tenants and just running some admin work and whatnot. But yeah, that's it's a tough business, man. It's a super tough
Yeah.
business. Important business, but super tough business.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then you said before that you sold a lot of turnkey properties to Australian investors. Like, how did you get started with that initially? That
Yeah.
seems like it's an interesting
Yeah.
twist.
So a friend of mine who lives in Chicago, his cousin was the CFO of a marketing company in Australia.
Hmm.
So what they were doing, this marketing company in Australia, what they were doing was they were getting a lot of clients to
Hmm.
buy properties in Australia, and they were making a little bit of marketing fee. So my friend connected me with CFO of this marketing company, and then I started helping them with the properties that they were buying. So essentially, we were just selling this marketing company the properties, and I was making a little bit of money on that. And all the money that I was making, I was investing into more properties for myself.
Gotcha. And then, but it sounds like you've like really built that up over the years, like in terms of like, is that a large portion of your business still, or
No, no. That
no?
business died down in 2014, 15. I mean, it was just solely
Uh,
based on the exchange rate. People were
ah,
buying because the Australian dollar was strong against the US dollar. So one part was the property values were low. So that was one reason. And then the fact that Australian dollar was stronger against the US dollar, that was another reason. So people were buying more for the, FX rate. They were investing in a tangible asset. And then as the US dollar grew stronger against the Australian dollar, so then people started selling just so that they could cash more in the Australian dollars.
gotcha.
Yeah, we don't do any, like, I haven't sold any property to any Australian investor in the last, I don't know, like 7 8 years now.
Okay, got
Yeah.
it. And what's like your vision for, I guess, all your businesses for the next 3 years?
I think house flipping and property management, it's pretty straightforward. The house flipping business, I think very happy with the volume that we're doing.
Mm,
25 30, maybe scale it up to 35 40 if Jay and Claudia have the capacity. If it doesn't
mm,
take much of my time, I'm okay as long as they are willing to scale it to
mm,
the point where they feel comfortable. Same thing on the property management side. The goal would be to keep um, buying, and as the interest rate changes, that's where our business will change a little bit.
mm,
Once the interest rate comes down, I think we'll start doing more turnkey properties, selling to
mm,
other investors. That's where the property management business comes in. But we're at about 250 units right now that we manage, including my units. So that business primarily gets more properties from the ones that we are selling to other investors. So that the back end goes to our property management company. And with my personal portfolio, if I come across a good property, a multi-unit like 12 10 unit plus, then I'll look at that. And then recently is where kind of I spend majority of my time
Mm,
on. So my goal is to scale that business. That's where I see the biggest opportunity. That's where I get the most excited, like in terms of impact that I can make. That's where I see I can make the biggest impact. We have thousands of companies across the US that are using recently, and it's adding value to the business. Like they're able to make money using our software. Like that's the most amazing feeling that you can get, that you created something and it's helping other people make money. So that's what we want to keep doing more of, keep scaling that,
mm,
and just kind of go from there. I'm really enjoying the ride right now.
yeah. What are some interesting projects that you have upcoming in terms of software development and recently?
Uh, I mean, we have an update coming next month, like integrating with Gmail. That's something a lot of people have been asking for.
Mm,
And there's some other stuff that we're working on that, we're kind of keeping it, close to our chest for now, that are going to be coming out like later this year or next year. But it's
mm,
always, I mean, the great thing with software is that there's always something exciting going on, whether it could be
mm,
good, it could be bad. Like today, if you look at like so many flight delays because of a bug that came into Microsoft system, right? I don't know if you
mm,
read that, like thousands of flights were canceled or delayed just because there was a small bug. So it's always something that you could make like a small change, and it's very interesting to see how it affects other people using that.
mm,
Just people get so used to using a software a certain way, where you had originally made a mistake in how kind of you presented it, but people got so used to it over the years. And now if you fix it, like for example, people read left to right, top to bottom, right? So our activity log was always in the in descending order, I guess. Like we would have the latest messages on top, the oldest one at the bottom. But when you look at any other messaging platform, you would have the most recent messages at the bottom, right? If you go to your iPhone texting, the most recent
yeah.
would be at the bottom and the older one would be at top. So after like 3 4 years, we kind of switched it to how all the other applications like Slack, iMessage, everything. And people just went crazy. Like, how could you do that? It just doesn't make any sense. I'm so used to, seeing all my messages on top. And we said, just to be more aligned with any other application that you would use. It was just amazing how, like, how much, people got upset about that. But then you have to make a decision about, okay, it just, people are unhappy right now, but it's the right thing to do. So you just have
Mm,
to like stick to your guns and like, okay, we're not gonna pull back on this. I know people are going to be upset for like a week or two. It's a big change for someone who's used to going their muscle memory, going their eye to the top of the chat message to see the top messages, to the recent messages. But then
mm,
we flipped it to how you would see any other application. But then you feel good about that, you feel strongly about that, okay, this is the right thing to do, so we're going to keep it like this. But then
mm,
it's interesting to see people's reaction. And sometimes you roll out something super insignificant, like, okay, people are not even going to notice this, and then you get people like, oh my god, thank you so much, I can't believe you made that change. Like, oh wow, I didn't even realize it was such a big pain point to have.
mm, yeah.
Yeah.
What's what are some challenges that you've faced over the years in any of these businesses that we've talked about?
I think the biggest challenge with recently, it's still something that I struggle with, is so we have people in 4 different countries. We have some people in US,
Hmm.
some in India, some in Philippines, some in Bangladesh. So we have good culture in each of the individual countries,
Hmm.
but it's not, we're struggling to have a company wide culture across people that are from different countries, different time zones,
Mm,
different languages, different cultural background. I think that's a struggle that we have. And I don't know if there's an easy way or if there's a way we'll ever be able to get to the point where, like, okay, it just feels like one unified culture, right? I mean, everyone is on board, they understand kind of the vision that we have for the company, what we're trying to build. But if you have all your employees in one country, it's different than when you have your employees in different countries, different languages,
Mm,
different time zones. I think that's a struggle that we have. I mean, this year I did go and visit my team in all three countries, so Philippines, India, and Bangladesh, which was great. But then again, it was building culture in that specific country. So when I was in
mm,
Philippines, I was just with the Philippines team, right? When I
mm.
was in India, I was just with the team in India. So you just have to figure out. I mean, it's a challenge that we have to figure out, how do we solve and bring everyone together. So there's a little bit more communication between people from different countries. You know,
What have you done to try to improve that?
I mean, not much. I mean, we'll share some stuff on company Slack channel. I think there's a lot more we can do. I'm working with my coach on that, in helping me with that. But some of the things we do is, we know everyone's birthday, so we send them cake, we send them some gift,
Mm,
wherever they are, whatever country they're in. So we'll send them something, we'll share it on our Slack channel. Hey, happy birthday, or someone's getting married, or someone's having kids, we'll share pictures, stuff like that, just so that kind of people know each other. If someone is in Philippines in our support team, and for example, they will never otherwise communicate with a developer in India. But
mm,
if they see this developer just got married and you share pictures, they feel a little connected, with
mm,
that person. So doing some of those things, sending, like, recently, swag items like t-shirt and stuff like that, just to kind of,
mhm,
so everyone feels like part of the team. And then me personally, like, talking to the team and just telling them, keeping them excited about the vision that we have, kind of what we're building.
mm.
Those are some of the things we're doing.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
What are some challenges that you faced as you were growing, like the flipping side of the business?
I think flipping side, I would say, like, finding contractors, that
Mm,
seems to be the challenge. And especially once I from moved from California, I mean, from Chicago to California, just finding the right people. I mean, at the end of the day, it's any business, when you think about it, it's a people business, right?
mhm,
It's, you got to have right people. You could have the best product in the world, you could have the best deal in the world, you could have the best opportunity in the world, but if you don't have the right people to manage that, it just, you're not going to go anywhere. So having some bad hires,
mm,
that, like, really sets you back, that really discourages you if you hire someone and that person ends up being, not what you expected, right?
mm,
Or they end up, like, cheating you in the business, like stealing from you. That kind of really pushes you back, and then you have to then question, is it something like I did wrong, in judging their character, or was it
mm,
my fault that led them to what they did, or I just made, it was just a mistake that I made, and it's not going to happen with somebody else. So I think, like, having a couple of contractors that I hired, they're absolutely, like, horrible contractors. Like, this one time in Chicago, and I was living in Chicago, I remember, like, this was the second property I bought in September of 2010, and then we have polar vortex, I think, in Jan or Feb 2011,
mhm,
and one of the pipes froze in one of my properties. There's 3 unit, so I called this guy out, and he could just tell I had no idea what the heck I was doing. And I said, hey, can you go give an estimate? It's like, oh my gosh, this is, like, insane, it's going to cost you $3,000. I'm like, okay, just go ahead and do it. He just, like, scared the shit out of me. And I'm like, okay, yeah, just do it now. I would pay no more than $300-400 for the same thing.
mm,
But then, it just kind of leaves you a little discouraged. But then on the flip side, look at, if he had been honest with me, he would have had an amazing opportunity to just, like, scale with me as I was scaling.
Mm-hmm.
right? But he was looking for the quick dollars at that point. I think people don't think about long term enough. I
Mm.
think for like, hey, what can I do in the short term to make this, make this quick buck? I think
Mm.
that's where people lose a lot of opportunities. If you're patient with what you're doing, if you're thinking about long term, all the decisions that you're making right now aligns with what you want to do in the long term, that's where you get some really good opportunities. So yeah, I would say like hiring bad people. Then on the flip side, the best thing that's happened in my business is hiring the right people, like
Mm.
Claudia, Jay, Gabby, and then even the people that I have at my software company.
Yeah. What is your process now to make sure that you hire the right people who are aligned with the long-term vision?
I mean, that's a tough part. If I mean, it depends. Like if you're hiring for a position, they need to have certain skill set, right? I mean, let's say if I'm hiring someone for a customer support position, so the job posting that we'll make at the end, the very last line would be, if you're interested, reply back with this subject line, right?
Mm-hmm.
It might be like, I'm awesome, I'm super amazing. If they don't do that, they automatically disqualify the fact that they didn't even go down, read the entire job application. But what I've noticed, like looking back at the people that are in my company now and the roles that they are in, when I hired them, they didn't have any skill for that specific role.
Mm.
They were just the right people with the right work ethics. They're just willing
Mm.
to work hard and willing to just take on anything that they wanted, anything that I kind of threw at them. Like, Claudia, for example, I hired her as a personal assistant to just help me with some admin work. Now she's, project manager. And then Gabby in my business, who's managing, who's a property manager, same thing with her. Like when I hired her, her role was going to be, hey, just help me kind of manage these properties. I mean, she's actually going to assist someone else to manage the properties. But these are the people that anytime I gave them something, I'm like, okay, I'll do it. They would never say no. If they didn't have the answers, they were like, okay, I'll figure it out. They just
Mm.
felt more comfortable just saying, okay, can I give this to you? Can I give this to you? Can I give you more? Can I give you more? And they're like, yeah, sure. Until you feel comfortable, okay, their plate is full, they're kind of at the optimal performance level. And then you start building your team around them. I think
Mm.
just so the most important thing is to look for people with the right work ethics, like right attitude. And let's say if I
Mm.
have someone who has the best skills in the world, right? Just the most amazing, absolutely amazing resume. But if that person is not honest, right? The person cheats in some way, like shows up late or just is not honest. Right? There's no training that I can send this person to and say, hey, can you go take this training and just it's going to teach you how to be honest,
Yeah.
right? But if the person is honest and they show up on time, then there's all the trainings in the world that you can send them to, right? If I have
Mm.
someone, again, like going back to the example of, let's say if I'm hiring someone for the customer support, but they don't have any experience in customer support, but they're willing to learn, they're willing to show up, I can say, all right, here's, typically from the time we hire to the time we get someone onboarded, it takes them about a month, but I'm willing to put another another couple of weeks or a month into your training because you have the right, attitude towards work. So I can have them go
Mm.
take a training just to learn some of the skills. That part is easy, but they
Mm.
have to have the right mindset, right work ethic. Now it's hard to, there's no test that you can have someone take. It's something, you have to go based on your gut feeling, right? How does the person show up on the interview? How do they, the questions that you ask them, like how do they answer? Like what kind of questions they're asking you about the role that they have. Are they asking you, how much am I going to get paid? Like what's the incentive? Then that's not the right person. Of course we want to pay everyone competitive salary and give them incentives that are aligned with the business. But if that's kind of what their focus is, then they're not showing up with the right mindset that we want them to show up with.
Mm. Gotcha. That makes
Yeah.
sense.
So yeah, you take your time to hire someone, but if you feel like someone is not the right fit, then you have to ask your question, hey, would I hire this person again? If the
Mm.
answer is not yes, then you have to move on.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great tip.
Yeah.
Sometimes we've invested a lot of time in people that if we
Yeah.
ask that question again, the answer might be
Yeah.
no.
Yeah, exactly. And if it's no, then like this is something we do with our team. If the answer is so, if I have the head of my CS team go through every single person and answer that question, would we hire that person? And if the answer is no, okay, why not? Like, what is it about that person that we would not hire them? And so just so that we make sure we don't make the same mistake again with the next hire that we have. And then
Yep.
another thing that really worked well for us is so we ask internally in our team, just like we ask ourselves, would we hire this person? We ask our team members, and this is the anonymous feedback that they give us on a scale of 1 to 10. How do you feel? And this is every week. How do you feel uh, about working at Resembly? 10 would be the best company ever, super excited. One would be, hey, you're going to see my 2 week notice tomorrow, And then if it's anything less than 10, then we ask them, it's all anonymous. Okay, why is it not a 10? What can we do to make it a 10? There's
Huh.
some amazing feedback that comes out of it. It's anonymous, so people feel comfortable sharing it. They would say, like for example, I'm taking too many calls. I don't have time to catch up on my email. It's a simple thing. So when someone gave us that feedback, say, okay, you take calls for 3 hours, you take a break for an hour, you take calls for 3 hours, you take a break for an hour to catch up on email. That was just such a simple thing. We didn't think of it, but then our team came up with that. Someone from our team came up with that and said, could you start doing that? So
Mm.
just asking that every week and then seeing if it's less than a 10, why is it less than a 10? Like what can we do? Is it something that we can do in our company to just make it a 10 out of 10 experience for them?
Yeah. And that's like a thing, like an automated thing that gets emailed to them every week, and then you review what the results come back, or
Yeah, so my team reviews it. I just look at the number. If it's less than 10, then I ask them, okay, why was it not 10? Yeah.
yeah. You
Yeah.
look at like the average, or you look at like if any of the ones who say less than 10, or
Yeah, so I mean the average has to be 10, right? Every person should give us a 10. So even if one person gave less than a 10, then the average would be like 9.5, for example. Then we look at, okay, why is it 9.5? Who gave us a low rating?
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Cool. That's
Yeah.
interesting. I've never heard of anyone doing that internally. I think that's an awesome idea.
Yeah, no, it makes a difference. I mean, you can just check the team feels pretty happy about that.
Mm.
Just they feel heard. I mean, when they actually see something that they mention like immediately get implemented the next week, they're like, "Oh, this is amazing."
Yeah. That is amazing, actually.
Yeah.
Well, we're getting close to the end here, and there's always two questions I like to ask
Okay.
at the end of the show. The first is, what is the craziest or most uncomfortable situation that you have ever experienced in a real estate deal?
Oh, it's not a deal. It's the people that I hired with. I mean, that I hired. Um, so it's very crazy. It's so I'd hired this person from Craigslist. By the way, I also hired Claudia from Craigslist. So Claudia helped me hire this another person from Craigslist in Indiana to just kind of oversee our project. Back then we were doing about 40, 50 flips a year. So Claudia had hired someone part time to help us kind of oversee the projects, manage the contractors because, we had tons of projects going on. And then this person was doing a great job. We kind of kept giving her more and more responsibilities. But then, and she was married with kids and all. It turned out she was actually having an affair with the contractor on her main contractor who's working the projects. So just at a time having to let go of both the local project manager that we had and the contractor, that was like the most uncomfortable situation that we were in. But it was a blessing in disguise. Just kind of there were other things that were going on that we were not aware of. But yeah, that was very uncomfortable having that conversation, and saying, okay, we have to like move on from this
Yeah,
work relationship.
gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah, but in terms of deal, I'd say there's one that I thought I was going to make $100,000, but we ended up losing about 50, 60. And this was something we bought out of our buy box at the, so we bought right before the interest rate were going to go in. So we typically buy properties in like no more than 250 resale price, right? 150 to 250 is our sweet spot.
Mm,
We don't really buy anything below 150, or we don't buy anything that's going to sell for more than 250. That's kind of, for the most part, 80% of deals, that's what we feel comfortable with.
mhm,
So, I came across this deal where the seller was selling this property for 485. Um, and we had to put like 50,000 into it, or we were going to be all in for 550, and we were going to sell it for like 695 or 700. So, I started seeing dollar signs all over. We ended up buying the property. This was like right as the interest rate was starting to go up. This is like a very high end for the market that we invest in. So we buy this property, we're all in for 550, and we put it on the market for 695 or 675. It doesn't sell. We just kept lowering, lowering, lowering. And I think we ended up selling it for like 510, 515. So after all the
mm.
commissions, the interest costs that we had to pay, like we lost about 50, 60,000 on that. Yeah.
Oof.
That kind of
Yeah.
sucked, but it was a good lesson to learn, that just stay in your comfort zone, that you feel not in the comfort zone, but stay in, the area of your expertise that you feel comfortable with.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So the second question I always ask is, if you could go back in time and give yourself one piece of advice when you were looking for your first deal, knowing what you know now, what would you tell yourself?
First deal, I mean, I would say just like make more offers. But
Hmm.
the biggest piece of advice I would give myself is just buy more.
Hmm.
Just buy more rental properties. Yeah.
Hmm.
I think I got to a point where 2014, 15, I slowed down buying, just thinking that, okay, this is, we've reached the peak of the market. It's like the prices are not going to go up this, and they're going to start to come down. And I think I just kind of took a break from buying. I shouldn't have done that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Cool. Well, Sharad, if people want to reach out to you after the show, if they want to get in touch with you, how could they go about doing that?
Yeah. The best way would be Sharad at resimply.com. So SHARAD at RESIMPLI.com.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for being on the show. This is great.
Thank you, Mike, for having me. Thank you. This was great.